Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you all?
Hi, Miss Archer.
Oh God, why is that so dry?
I'm homesick for the second week now, so
What? And you had some cold thing before?
yeah, and I catch it again.
You have your COVID shots?
I do. Thank God I do.
Yeah, but
We're sick.
yeah, you'd have been worse. Because this is a respiratory infection thing.
Yeah, I think I'm to the end of it now, but last week was rough.
Well, I see some people had it and it appeared to have gone. And the minute the weather changed, they had it again. And this time, even though they went to the doctor and got medication, man, they coughing nonstop.
Wow.
I haven't been coughing and stuff. I just been very fatigued and like a lot of nausea and stuff. So I'm grateful. I had like one really bad day of fever and headache and everything. And then after that, it's just I feel so groggy. Like I can't get enough sleep.
Oh, yours different then. They can't stop coughing.
Yeah, no. So if I didn't tell people I'm not well, a lot of times people don't even know.
Yeah, because you have different symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It
those people.
sounds like your body is really tired as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how much time did you take off?
At first I was given 5 days.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
4 days because I went to the doctor last week, Tuesday, and then I went back on Monday. And he was like, yeah, no, you could get the rest of the week off now again, okay? I mean, I've been working, I just haven't been going to the office.
But the point is that you're still working, you're not resting, you're not just laying down reading a book or watching TV and dozing off to sleep. So even though you're working and working from home is not that's not what the doctor ordered.
Oh, I do it the other way around. When I get bored, I sit down in front of my computer and do a little task here or there, and then I just go watch a movie or relax or sit outside. So I do an half.
All right. All right, I excuse you then. All right, let's get started. I don't know where the rest are, but I guess they'll come in or they may be sick just like you because a lot of people are sick. So how was your sessions with Mr. Wilkinson? It was good?
Yeah, it was good. It was
Okay.
good.
And I sent you all something to eat. You saw that?
Yes.
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 That's come out. So I said, let me send that to you all. That's good reading material. So today's class is on other products. So we did trust in part 1. Then in part 2, part 1, we looked at companies incorporated under the IBC Act or under the Companies Act. And now we're going to look at some other products that we offer. So the first one is called a private trust company. Either of you familiar with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So what is a PTC?
Well,
Yes,
it's a trust company that has 5 or less clients,
Mm-hmm.
and that is like related clients.
Yes. Related or by blood.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It comes under it doesn't come under the central bank.
Why?
Well, they
Why?
don't have the same regulatory
Oh,
requirements.
you mean that? Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't have the same regulatory requirements as a full-fledged trust company does.
Agreed. So if you look at how a PTC is created in comparison to a trust, you see the similarities?
You mean in terms of the documents?
Not just but the structure.
Yes.
So you trust, right? The trust has a settlor, a trustee, and beneficiaries. What does a PTC have?
The same thing, eh?
Mm-hmm. So what gives it that uniqueness to make it different, that someone would want to incorporate a PTC besides it being for blood relatives?
Could it be that it has, the PTCs that have a special director, who doesn't necessarily have to be the person who the trust is for?
Yes,
Um,
that's the thing.
and then it allows, because in my mind, I'm thinking a PTC usually someone from the trust. Well, the PTCs, the shares in the PTC is whole, that they belong to the trust. Because the PTC is acting as trustee for the trust.
Mhm.
But it doesn't, like when you're doing registers and such, you wouldn't have to have the beneficiaries of the trust named as owners of the PTC for confidentiality purposes, but they are owners of the PTC because the trust is the owner of the PTC, shareholder of the PTC.
Okay, so what's the role of the special director? Why we need a special director?
I think it's similar to a trustee, a professional trustee, in similarity in terms of being having experience so that they can properly manage the PTC that is acting as trustee for the trust.
Yes. Yes. So if you look at it, why do you think we created this PTC? We have trusts,
Mhm,
and you can have different types of trusts, remember? You could have
mhm.
a discretionary trust, a fixed income trust, you could have a spendthrift trust, you could have different types of trusts. Why did we need this PTC? Why was this created? Anyone could think of it? Why?
It's not, the structure is not as complex.
That's one thing, yes.
And also, I guess from a cost perspective.
Yes. It's not as costly if you would have taken your 5 trusts and put it under a big trust company. The fees that you have to pay
Mhm.
is a lot. And what else? That's 2 things. So you see how the final exam question coming, right? Okay. So what's the third thing? Come on, you're getting warm. Why were these PTCs created?
Does it help in some way with the management of maybe other underlying companies of the trust?
What's this other? Clarify.
So like if the trust owns, say, a company that's specific to dealing with real estate, to managing real estate assets, and they have another trust that's specific to dealing with artwork, and then maybe another one that's specific to dealing with a boat or something like that. The PTC could have control over all of those underlying companies, to help everything to be a part of one unit instead of having all kind of different companies all over the place that have to filter in. For KYC purposes, I think it makes it a little easier. And for reporting purposes, it probably also, in terms of money flow, you could see the connection always back to the trust.
Mm-hmm. So really it came from a lot of restricted entities having to pay, like we said, a lot of fees, huge amounts of fees, but also those restricted entities, those restricted trusts, because there are a family or blood relatives, they can make their own decisions.
Okay.
They didn't need other people to make decisions for them because all the businesses are family-owned businesses. So what you would have seen before they would have created the PTC is you would have a restricted trust company managing 5 trusts or 3 trusts or 4 trusts. And the family wants the business to be going in this direction. And the trustees wanted to be going in another direction. So the family wants to have control of those assets.
So is easier doing business?
Yes. And that's always the key in the financial sector. It's not just creating a product, but looking at what is easier for your clients to do business. How do we get rid of a lot of the red tape? And how do we create a product that persons will be interested in? So a lot of the restricted entities then transferred into a PTC. So a PTC is required to have a registered representative. What documents should be kept at that office?
The corporate document of the PPC, KYC documents. So the trust documents that would show the settlor and the beneficiaries, since they're shareholders of the PPC, minutes and that kind of thing.
Yep, so the registered representative.
Registered agent?
No, they're called the registered representative. See, remember? Okay, Melissa, you came in and we were comparing the PTC to the trust. So at the office, you should have the memo and arts. You need to have the designating instrument. You should have the resume of the special director, the person who has all of the trust expertise. Then you should have the trust instrument itself. And then some companies ask for an acknowledgement. You familiar with that?
No, I don't.
No.
Okay, so and some companies ask for it. So an acknowledgement is where the settlor states that he is aware that the PTC doesn't require 1, directors to possess expertise in trust administration, because that's why they have the special director. 2, a fidelity bond. And 3, that their capital exceed $5,000. And 4, that they're not required to have an annual audit. So the settlor acknowledges that. So in addition to the memo and arts, the designating instrument, the professional resume of the special director, the trust instrument itself for each trust. And then of course, it's like Leah said, then you need the profiles of all of the individuals.
Ms. Archer, can you go over what the special director is all about, please? Again, sorry.
Okay, so the special director is a person who has knowledge of trust administration. They should have at least 5 years experience in trust administration or some other discipline that's relevant to it. So if they don't have trust in administration, they could be law, it can be investment management, or accounting, or finance, or commerce. Because remember, one of the main duties of a trustee is to do what? What's the main duty of a trustee?
Invest.
To invest, yes. So he has to have some knowledge of finance. And so normally the registered representative would ask for a copy of the resume of the special director.
To verify that those things are in place.
Yes, that he has that experience and knowledge. And of course, like you all were saying, Janice and Leah, you know, you have to have your KYC. And your KYC have to be in compliance with the FTRA and the FTRR. So you have to verify not just the individuals, but you also have to verify the structure, the ownership structure, the companies within the structure. And the registered representative should also be able to request information from the PTC on any transaction. So even though we have trust companies with different features, we also have private trust companies that deal with blood relatives holding restricted trust. But we also have restricted trusts per se that are not blood relatives. Again, they are only allowed, that trustee of those restricted trusts, they're not blood. So there's like 3 or 4 different trusts owned by different people. Now that trustee for those restricted trusts must have the trust experience and the background. And so his license is as a restricted trustee. And again, the limitation is 5 trusts. So now you know we have trusts, general trusts, offering products and services to clients. We have PTCs, which are private trust companies dealing with 5 trusts or less, but they are all blood relatives. And then you can have a restricted trust, which is again, no more than 5 trusts, but they are not related to each other. You could even have a restricted trust that has a series of trusts, all for the beneficiaries, all for the benefit of the same beneficiaries. Any comments, any question on the PTC versus a trust? Or a restricted entity?
So you will
No.
not say a restricted trust, you'll say a restricted entity?
I could say restricted trust. You mean like exam wise?
No, not exam, just
Oh.
asking.
Yeah, restricted trust. A restricted trust.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
If a PTC can be established under Company Act or the IBC Act, what is done differently to so that you know that it's actually a PTC and not just a company and not just a IBC.
I try and understand your question. What you mean?
So, like, I could just say ABC Company Limited and it's a PTC? Like, is there anything differently that has to be done in the incorporation process that makes it different from just a regular company or regular IBC so that, you know, it's a PTC?
Oh, you have to register it under the PTC legislation,
So that would be after you incorporate it, or,
right? After you incorporate it, you decide whether you're incorporating it under the CAC or under the IBC. Because under the
Okay.
C versus the IBC, you know, there are different requirements. IBC is just one shareholder.
right, okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So it's the same way like how you would do a SAC. You incorporate the company, but then you register it under the segregated account legislation. So that's trust, a restricted trust, a PTC that acts for a family of no more than 5 trusts that have to be blood relatives. Then we have the purpose trust. So what's the purpose trust?
It says for non-charitable purposes,
Mm-hmm.
for individuals and charity. Non-charitable purposes. Purpose trusts are flexible financial services product and are often used for estate planning, wealth management, commercial reasons, and for philanthropic enterprises.
Mm-hmm. So why would someone want to incorporate a purpose trust?
Because the trust is only intended for a specific reason.
Yes, that's one. What other reason? It has certain features to it. You have to think of these products as products that are useful in terms of structuring or utilizing your assets. So it is a trust.
So
How
is
do
the purpose trust similar then to, like how I was talking about an underlying company, that the company is established for a particular purpose? Like,
Yeah.
I could have an authorized purpose trust. Okay, first of all, first question I should ask. Does an authorized purpose trust stand alone or does it have to fall under another trust?
No, it falls under another trust.
Okay, so then, okay, back to the other question. So I can have ABC Trust, and then I have A Purpose Trust, B Purpose Trust, C Purpose Trust, and one is for the house, one is for the boats, one is for the artwork.
Yeah, one could
So-
be for, one could have one, the purpose trust could be to have voting rights for a particular company. Remember now, when you're dealing with wealth management or estate planning, they do not want their names all over these documents. That's why they're using vehicles. So you could create more than one purpose trust in a structure.
How does it work in terms of having the trust you mentioned to have voting rights? Would it be that the company that the decision needs to be made would have on their governing documents that this particular trust has the rights to make decisions or what have you. So when it's time to
Mhm.
make a decision, that's what's on the papers instead of the people's name, then it'll just say this trust.
So let's say the company in its articles, it will state the type of shares that it has. And this purpose trust could be holding some of those shares with voting rights.
Okay, so okay, all right. I was trying to figure out what would be the benefit in that other than complexity, but I guess that makes sense if you want to have shares in a publicly traded company then.
Yes, you could do that.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's not just about complexity, you know, it's also about confidentiality.
So that's the attraction of this vehicle?
Yes.
Okay.
So even if within the trust itself, the whole trust structure, if the trustees decide that there is an underlying company that needs financing, you're not going to see Mr. John Doe. Nowhere. You're not even going to see Trust Company ABC. They're going to use a special purpose trust for whatever that transaction is. And the only disadvantage it has is that the purpose trust can't hold land. So whenever it comes to holding land, they're going to incorporate a company, an IBC. So it is a little bit different from having a regular company. It is a trust. So just like a regular trust, they have the trust instrument, the settle or transfers, the assets, whatever that asset is, to the trustee, and the trustee holds it and administers it for the benefit of the beneficiaries. So that purpose trust is really just for a purpose that is authorized by the trust instrument. Now, in trust law, there was always an argument about whether a trust is charitable or non-charitable. So this authorized purpose trust that the Bahamas has created, it's for charitable purposes, or it could be for non-charitable purposes.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
When it says that there are no beneficiaries of an authorized purpose trust, and you mentioned just now about the settler transferring assets for the benefit of the beneficiaries.
Mhm.
And maybe I'm confusing things.
No, they don't call them beneficiaries under a purpose trust.
Okay, okay. All right.
You have a
cool.
different name for them.
Okay.
Yeah. So in trust law,
What do we call the beneficiaries, Miss Anjo?
authorized applicants. Authorized applicants. I'll get to them shortly. So in trust law, you have charitable trust. And a charitable trust, in order for a trust to be charitable, it had to fall under one of the four heads. And those four heads came from law. It either had to be for the advancement of education, for the relief of poverty, for the advancement of religion, or any other purpose for the benefit for the community at large. So if it didn't fall under one of those four, then it was not a charitable trust. But when we enacted the Purpose Trust, we began to recognize in the Bahamas trust for non-charitable purposes. So for a Purpose Trust, there's no requirement that you name a beneficiary. But an authorized applicant has to be appointed. And their role is to ensure that the trustees are fulfilling their obligations under the trust. Now, under the authorized purpose trust legislation, they provide that a trust may create an authorized purpose trust of capital. So you have a typical trust, and they can actually create an authorized purpose trust of capital or income. And then have fixed interests or discretionary interests, or they could do a combination of both. And then they could dispose of that interest from that authorized purpose trust. So you understand now how the mechanism works? You could have a trust at the top, and then you could create an authorized purpose trust where you take the income from the underlying companies, and instead of when you pass it up to the actual trust, then you take it from the trust company and put it in authorized trust. And then you could distribute from the authorized purpose trust. So who is this authorized applicant? So the law doesn't state that this authorized applicant is an enforcer, but they carry out the functions like an enforcer. So an authorized applicant or applicants, they have certain rights. They can bring a matter before the court in respect of allocation of income and capital. So they could go before the court and say, send in an originating summons and say, we have an issue with the way in which the interest is being distributed, or the different purposes of the trust. They could go to the court and ask the court to resolve any uncertainty with regard to the administration of the trust. If they think that the trust itself is not workable, they can go to the court and ask the court to make a determination. These authorized applicants, they have the same rights as beneficiaries of an ordinary trust, the same rights. So they can bring a matter to the court on the administration of the trust, or they can go and ask for recovery of trust property. They have a right to see the accounts, and they could make inquiries. So they could make the same request as a beneficiary. They have a right to inspect. They can make copies of the instrument. They can make copies of the register and documents of the trust and other records that the trust has. They could even make, have a look at opinions and legal advice or counsel in the general administration of the trust. And they have the same right to information and access to documents as if they were a beneficiary with a vested interest under the trust. So really, the purpose trust is for flexibility, because it allows the object of the trust to be either persons or organizations. Any questions so far? You're not confused with the purpose trust?
I think I'm gonna have questions when we do our exam reviews.
You'll have questions when we do our exam?
No, we need to do the exam review.
Oh, okay.
Because by
you,
then, yeah, by
Yeah.
then I've read over everything.
okay. All right. Because the purpose trust itself can have any number of beneficiaries or authorized applicants. And it can have any number of authorized purposes. So it could be charitable or it could be non-charitable. As long as the purpose meets the requirement of the legislation. So in
I'm
some,
a bit
go ahead.
confused now where you said the purpose trust can also be charitable. So
Yes.
you would create a purpose trust and then create a charitable trust under the purpose trust?
No, the purpose itself can be charitable.
That's majority, okay.
Mhm. Remember now, if you're saying that it is for charity, it has to fall under one of the four heads. Now, a private trust can never be rendered void for uncertainty. Remember the requirements for a trust to be valid? There must be 3 certainties. Remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so a purpose trust can never be void for uncertainty. Any uncertainty can be resolved by the trustee or anybody that the trust instrument specifies to resolve that issue. And of course, if it can be resolved, then you take it to the court. So it is very rare that a purpose trust would be declared void on grounds of uncertainty. Versus
But a
how
regular trust would,
like, yes.
okay.
So again, the Purpose Trust Act, and all these acts are online. The Purpose Trust Act provides for the authorized applicant who enforces the trust rather than beneficiaries. And these authorized applicants are appointed under the terms of the trust instrument, or they could be appointed by the court. And then, like I said, they can enforce the terms of the trust by making the applications to the court that I stated to you earlier. So they can go to the court for breach of trust. Or they could go to the court and say, I have these rights to information and this is the information that I want. So individuals who are beneficiaries of the purpose trust, or persons who may benefit indirectly from the purpose trust, they are not authorized applicants unless they have been named in the trust instrument or appointed by the trust instrument. So there in a purpose trust, there is a distinction between the ability to benefit from the trust and the ability to enforce the terms of the trust. Two different things. So a Purpose Trust Act enables a trust to be set up with the objective of corporate ownership, and then the retention of control is in the hands of the director. So this will allow the trustee to mitigate any risk of owning shares in companies which it doesn't manage. So really all it does is, for a settlor, it is a vehicle that he could use, and he could own shares in a company without any exposure to liability to the trustee. So when you see persons have a trust structure and they have a lot of operational companies, they will use private trust company. They could use it for securitization. They could use it for ownership. They could use it for holding income or for holding capital from the trust. Even let's say if they decided that they were going to take some of the capital from the trust and invest it in the mutual fund, they'll set up a purpose trust for the ownership of those shares.
Ms. Archer,
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify the private trust company. It's only owned by one family that has multiple companies and would like to create a trust to manage each one of them, is what you're saying.
Said the other way around. A private trust company has no more than 5 trusts, and they're all owned by blood relatives.
Okay.
So you could have had a company, like I know of a company, let's say they make baby food. And they have an agricultural company. They have a bottle making company. Let me see, metal cover company. So it's like 5 different companies towards this one end product. But all the family members own it. So in that regard, they don't really need a professional trust company to pay exorbitant fees, because they are operating those companies themselves. They're managing it themselves. All the monies come back to them. The family decide where the money is going. Those are kind of companies that you will see as a PTC.
Okay.
And then of course, the purpose trust is a vehicle using it for commercial reasons. So it's more or less like a commercial trust vehicle. So a purpose trust is a very popular trust vehicle. And it is used in estate planning and for, like I said, commercial uses. So you could use a purpose trust for the whole shares of a PTC. So put in your mind, you have a PTC. Underneath that PTC, you have 3 or 4 or 5 trusts. Above that PTC, you can have a PT, a purpose trust. Or you could use a purpose trust for philanthropic or charitable purposes. You could use a purpose trust just for asset purchases or for financing. Or you could use it just to keep a particular asset because you don't want it on the balance sheet. So you put it in a purpose trust. Or you could create purpose trust if you want to set up a family structure to hold family assets or investments. Or if you wanted to preserve shares in a family-owned business. So what the purpose trust really does is like you segregate your assets, or you arrange your assets in a way whereby when you want to do commercial transactions, you have a vehicle for that purpose. So you could use a purpose trust where you could create trusts that benefit individuals or companies. And at the same time, you could continue your professional business. And like I said before, you could establish a purpose trust to separate your voting shares, your voting power from economic control. You could create a purpose trust when you're doing liquidation of some assets. You could create an authorized purpose trust to create an escrow trust to hold funds in escrow. Or if you just wanted to hold just one asset. So there's a lot of different ways you can use a purpose trust. And like they say, it's for charitable or non-charitable purposes. And you can see that it's used mostly for commercial transactions. Now, there are some requirements of a purpose trust. It has to be possible and sufficiently certain so that the trust could be carried out. It can't be contrary to public policy, and it can't be unlawful. And the trust instrument has to specify the event upon the happening of which the trust terminates, because it is for a purpose. And then the trust instrument has to speak to the disposal of surplus assets. So again, if you see a trust, the trust is not going to say, I am a purpose trust. You have to look at the purpose for which the trust was created, why it was created, and whether it has a termination date. The trustee of a purpose trust has to be licensed by the central bank or licensed as an FCSP, Financial Corporate and Service Provider. And of course, because it is a charitable / non-charitable trust, the Attorney General can make an application to enforce the purpose trust. The Attorney General could also ask for documents related to the purpose trust. And the Attorney General can also perform any activities that the authorized applicant is privileged to do under the purpose trust. And the Attorney General can also apply to the court for the appointment of an authorized applicant. So what documents do you think a trustee must keep if he has a purpose trust? What documents do you think he must have?
The trust document that actually says what the purpose of it is, and maybe whatever document is used to appoint the authorized applicant.
Mm-hmm. What else do you think he needs? He's gonna have to have a register. And that register should really tell him the purpose of the trust. Like you were saying, Leah, he needs to know who are the authorized applicants. And he should be able to show on that register the financial position of each trust at the end of the year. And also give details on principal and income. Because it's really for a particular purpose. And notice, most of the activities is for commercial transactions. So those records, the trustee must keep here in the Bahamas. So he's well aware of what's happening with that trust. So the purpose trust is, I guess, is boasted to be one of the most versatile products in our trust business. Because what it does is it gives the trust practitioners increased flexibility when they promote and structure trust planning for the clients. So it's really used for trust and estate planning. Any comments? Not until you read. So a past exam question said, a philanthropist wishes to establish a charitable trust in the Bahamas. Explain how the trust can be established pursuant to trust laws of the Bahamas, and discuss the role of the trustee in carrying out his function in the charitable trust. Sounds easy, hey?
No,
What you mean, no? I figured that was so easy till you all could say that on the top of your head. I think I should put that on the exam. You don't think so? So we talk about purpose trust, charitable and non-charitable. We spoke about private trust companies. And then as a part of purpose trust in the Bahamas, it can be a charitable or a non-charitable trust. Any comments, questions? None? None whatsoever? So our next class is on, what's the topic?
Money laundering, anti-money laundering, and countering terrorist financing.
Oh, that's Saturday. I'm trying to see if I should. I had a very old, if I give you all a question to compare a PTC versus a charitable trust. Do you think you can do that in the table?
we can try, sure.
Okay.
I think you're gonna be very upset when you read my answer.
Why?
Because it could be messy.
No, why would it be messy?
Because my brain only have so much right now.
Oh, Lord. By
But
the
we could
time,
try. We could try.
by the time the exam comes, you'll be much better. You'll be much, much better. Much better. All right, so Saturday, you want Zoom or you all want to be in person?
Could we do Zoom?
Yep, we can. Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
Storm is fine.
okay. Yeah, I hear that. Next Thursday is for you, right?
Next Thursday is for me.
Yes. Unless
What's
you're doing, you
What's
said you were,
happening Thursday?
you said you were traveling.
Yes, Ms. Archer, and we talked about combining the two last classes so that we can still have our exam on the 15th, I think.
Agreed.
Huh?
Agreed.
Hold on,
Yeah,
No.
What's the
Class.
test? Is it the 15th or the 22nd?
Second,
That's what I thought. Okay.
hold on.
No, it was special
I
to
missed that.
Deandra because she was traveling, so it was 2 exams, the exam dates. So for those who had to travel, who had made arrangements prior to, the exam will be that Saturday, the 15th, I think, and then we the following week on the 22nd. But that's only because she have to travel.
That sound right?
Hold on, let me look for my paper. 'Cause I had written this down. One
Okay,
sec.
we will wait on you.
Thank you.
Let me get my book while we wait on you. Let me see what my book says. But you
Yeah,
should
that's
have,
what that's what we said, because we said we'd have exam review on the 13th. And the exam
Exactly.
is actually on the 22nd, but we could also have review on the 15th.
where is this paper? So next week, Thursday, my note says, that's April the 6th, we will do modern developments in trust law and administration. And we will also do a quick review for Deandra. And then on the 13th of April, which is the week after, we will do
It's
a review with every,
another.
and the exam is on the 22nd.
And my exam will be the 15th, was it?
Whatever day you decided.
Okay, so we supposed to review,
From unit 1.
I remember it being like a week. Where's Siobhan? Siobhan, you here? Let me see. I remember it
Yeah,
being like
it's a week for us. We have
a week and
review
a
on the
half
13th, and then the
difference.
22nd is the exam, but because you traveling, you still have 2 reviews. It's just that your second review is 2 days before the exam.
Exactly. And you said that was too short. So you asked me to do a quick review for you on the 6th.
Right, so we have review the 6th and the 13th. And then I
Yes.
think I was supposed to do the test the 15th. But I
Yeah.
think me and Siobhan, I don't know if she here today. Let me see. No, I don't look so. Okay. And then we have, is it another chapter on the 6th and then review?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, we're on the same page.
Okay. So we straight.
All right, thanks.
Okay. So on Saturday, we'll do AML and terrace financing in trust business. Then on Thursday, we will do modern developments in trust law and admin. And we will do a quick review. So you will have an idea of the area for the exam. And then the following Thursday, we will go through it in detail. And
For clarity, on the 6th is when you would give us the areas to study as well, right?
yeah,
Okay,
that's all I'm giving you on the 6th, the areas to study. And then on the 13th, we'll go through those same areas.
Okay.
You had sufficient time between the 6th and the 13th to start to study those areas.
okay.
Yeah. Sounds good to everybody?
That's one.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
So that doesn't mean that you shouldn't start now. So that when I tell you what the areas are, then you know where to focus, but you wouldn't be like reading it for the first time.
Okay,
Understood?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so don't wait until then, and then afterwards, then you're gonna be getting confused because everything is gonna be running together in your head. So I would say you start reading now so that at least on the 13th, if you have any questions on the areas that I have selected, you're able to bring your questions then, especially you, Deandra.
Okay,
But you can't wait until the day of the short review and to start to read. Because as I start telling you the areas, you're gonna get all confused and muddled. And then you could begin to panic because you could be saying it's so much. Where this coming from? Where's that coming from? So you need to start going over it now. And so when I say there's a question on this topic coming from this angle, you know exactly where in your notes to get it. And you can
Right.
start there,
okay.
okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so we'll do money laundering on Saturday. I'll make sure Miguel sends the link and we'll look at money laundering from a trust perspective. And of course, you know, it has to do with all of these structuring that nobody likes. So start reading. I hope Mr. Wilkinson went over a couple of cases. If not, we'll see when I get to write this exam. All right?
Yes, ma'am.
So
All
start
right.
to prepare. There's no need for no one to be complaining next week. None. All right?
Okay,
All right. So we'll chat on Saturday.
yes.
Okay?
All right.
Okay, have a good evening.
Good evening.
So start
Good
reading in
evening.
case you have any questions on Saturday. We could just go over any area that you have any questions on before we begin the money laundering section.
Okay,
All right?
all right. Good night.
Okay, so good night.
night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.